The day has finally arrived. Toyota has pulled the wraps off the all-new 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser. The legend has returned. It died for a couple of years there. We weren't getting one in the States, but it's back, coming to you in spring of 2024, and I can't wait to show you around this all-new model. In this video, we're talking about all the details you need to know about the Land Cruiser, including the pricing, which is going to surprise you. We're going to talk about the pricing at the end of this video, and particularly the pricing on this one, because this is the entry-level Land Cruiser, the base car, while other reviewers are probably going to focus on the higher-end, more exciting, more glitzy model. I want to show you the value option, which is what we're looking at today. Now, the Land Cruiser has been sold here in the US since 1958. It's going on 65 years old, and this is an all-new generation, which is a departure from what we have seen in previous Land Cruisers. Now, I'm a big Land Cruiser fan. I've driven every generation of Land Cruiser. We've owned a bunch of them, ranging from the FJ40 to the 200 series to the FJ Cruiser. So I'm really excited to go hands-on with this vehicle and see if Toyota has done it right. Now, let's talk about sizing on this vehicle. Cole, do you want to do just a quick walk around? This vehicle is sized differently than the previous Land Cruiser we got in the States. So Land Cruiser generations are named based off of their series number. So here in the States, right, the first series that's most recognizable is the 40 series, then the 55, which is called the Iron Pig, and then you had the 60 series, the 80, the 100. The last one we got in the US was the 200. Then abroad, they got a model called the 300, which isn't coming here to the US. Everybody was really upset. Now we're getting the 300 in the form of the Lexus LX, but not the legendary Land Cruiser. So people were really bummed out a few years ago when Toyota killed the nameplate, but now it's back. This is not a 300 series Land Cruiser. This is a vehicle that shares its platform with the all-new Lexus GX. So this is a smaller, narrower, more lightweight, more slimmed down Land Cruiser. And I've got the exact specs here on how much smaller it is than the old 200 series. So it's 1.2 inches shorter than the 200 series and 4.4 inches narrower. So that begs a question. Where does this fit in when you've got the 4Runner? Because of course the 4Runner has always been Toyota's smaller, lighter weight, purpose-built off-roader. Well, the 4Runner is smaller than this Land Cruiser. It's 2.4 inches smaller. So this vehicle slots in lengthwise perfectly between the 4Runner and the outgoing 200 series Land Cruiser. Now, this is an old school vehicle in terms of its construction, which is great news for off-road and Land Cruiser fans. It's got a ladder frame, body-on-frame construction, where the body sits on top of a chassis, which is great for modification, great for off-road. It's really what you want in a purpose-built off-road vehicle. It still maintains a solid rear axle, and it's got independent front suspension. That is all very traditional Land Cruiser stuff. It's all stuff I think that most folks are going to be super happy has been retained on this purpose-built off-road Land Cruiser. What's not so traditional, however, is the powertrain. So let's pop the hood and talk about the engine option. There is only one engine option. So while the outgoing Land Cruiser was known for its monster V8, as it had been known for years here in the States, the new Land Cruiser is only available with this setup. What you're looking at there is a 2.4 liter four-cylinder engine. So a small displacement four-cylinder. Of course, you can see it's mounted longitudinally in the platform, so it sends its power back through an 8-speed automatic transmission and an old school 2-range transfer case. But there's more to this engine than just having a small displacement, because it of course is turbocharged, but it's also a standard hybrid. So sandwiched in this vehicle is a 48 horsepower electric motor. So you got a lot of new technologies going on to the Land Cruiser lineup. You've got turbocharging, you've got hybridization. Total system output is 326 horsepower, and the torque is 465. So that's kind of what you want to see, right, in an off-road vehicle, more torque than horsepower. What I'm really curious about is how is this powertrain going to perform in an off-road scenario? In previous Land Cruisers with inline-six engines or V8s, you get a big lump of torque down low, easy to modulate in 4-low, easy to crawl over rocks, but with this standard turbo and electrification, I'm really excited to get this out on the trail and see how it performs. Now, this engine is not new to the Toyota lineup. Variants on this engine have been used in vehicles like the new Tacoma, right, which is also available with the hybrid powertrain. Now, what's interesting to me about that hybrid powertrain is the battery. It's a 1.87 kilowatt hour nickel metal hydride battery. Now, in a world where just about every new electric car and a lot of new hybrids have gone to lithium ion, nickel metal hydride is an old technology. It's a technology which has been around for many, many decades. It's a relatively heavy way to package batteries in a vehicle. But I've asked Toyota in the past, because they use nickel metal hydrides on other hybrid vehicles, why stick with that formula? First answer, tried and true reliability. It's a known quantity. Toyota knows how to build a reliable nickel metal hydride pack that's going to last. Also, production constraints. That's the answers I've gotten in the past. So, you know, in terms of reliability, right, a lot of folks are worried about turbocharging and hybridization. You got to look at the letters located on the front of this vehicle, Toyota. This is a company that is driven by dependability. It's driven to make vehicles that are going to last. So I feel pretty confident in knowing that if this vehicle has a Toyota badge on the front of it, it's probably going to be engineered quite well, which I'm really excited about. And of course, Toyota's been making hybrids for over 2 decades now. They've been making turbochargers in other models for a long time, so pretty excited about this powertrain and made it to that 8-speed automatic. Hopefully, it provides good real-world performance. Now, from a design standpoint, what's interesting about this vehicle is Toyota has a 2-prong approach. This is the base car. This is called the 1958. So the make model trim, Toyota Land Cruiser 1958. Located above this trim is the Toyota Land Cruiser. So there's actually the base car is a 1958, the upper end car is a Land Cruiser, and then at the top of the trim line is a first edition, which is based on the Land Cruiser. They're building 5,000 units. Those are the cars that are going to be delivered starting in spring of 2024, and that's got the roof rack. It's got a bunch of other accessories to make it you know, a good overlander, make it a good off-roader. Now, design-wise, right, the 1958 has a circular headlight reminiscent to Land Cruisers of the past, reminiscent to like the early 60 series and the FJ40s and other models. It's iconic, it's legendary, and it's been modernized. We've got the egg crate style grille here with the Toyota script across the middle. Fantastic looking grille with some additional intakes down here below the front fascia. And then we got a lot of potential for off-road capability underneath this vehicle. So every Land Cruiser is going to come standard with front recovery points, which is a big deal. And this is something that we can't take for granted in 2024. Take a look at the Tundra, for example. Even the top trim TRD Pro Tundra is not going to get recovery points, but every version of the Land Cruiser is going to have recovery points. And while we're speaking of capability, every version of the Land Cruiser is going to have a 2-range high-low transfer case. Every version of the Land Cruiser is going to have a standard rear differential lock. Let me say that again. Every version of the Land Cruiser, even the base trim, is going to get a standard rear diff lock. Huge deal. We haven't seen rear diff locks in a lot of base Toyota products for a super long time. There was a while there, right, where Land Cruiser didn't even offer a rear differential lock. But every version of this new trim is going to get that option. Now, this base 1958 version is rolling on basically a 31.5-inch tall all-season tire. This is the Dunlop Grand Trek tire. The upper end Land Cruiser trim is going to have an all-terrain. Now, what I'm impressed with from my initial viewership of this vehicle is the amount of space that Toyota has given you on all sides of the tires, from where the front bumper, you know, meets the front apron to this area here on the rear fender. This looks like, even out of the box, you could probably fit a larger tire. The upper end Land Cruisers are going to get about a 32.6-inch tall tire, but I'm excited about this because I'm hoping there's going to be some more a potential for modification. Now, you can kind of, if you want to shine the camera in here, Cole, kind of something probably a lot of other channels won't show you, but you can see the way that the front suspension is designed here. So you got a coil front spring there with your upper and lower control arms. Looks fairly similar to what I've seen on the 4Runner. Looking back here, do have some potential there for clearance issues. I'm wondering if is that a body mount or what's going on there, but I'm wondering if maybe that could be trimmed back for folks modifying this vehicle. And then also worth noting about Land Cruiser, if you get the upper end Land Cruiser trim and first edition trim, you also get a disconnectable front sway bar, which is great, similar to what you find on the Lexus GX as well. Now as we make our way along the side here, boxy is the motive. Everything here is boxy. The mirror is very square, almost Wrangler-like mirrors in the way those are designed. You've got very vertical B-pillar, very vertical C-pillar, painted black to hide you know, the actual position of the B and the C pillar, give it kind of that silhouette. And then you've got that step-up rear line here along the rear doors that makes its way to the belt line on the rear quarter panel. And then you've got this scallop here, which is kind of iconic to Land Cruiser along the D pillar as that shoots forward there. Very continuous. And then out back, square once again, square everything. You got the square tail lights here. You got this square piece of black plastic trim along the back. You got another square tail light, of course. Chunky bumper with some texturization. And then behind this panel, you will find a standard tow hitch. I don't want to pull this off because this is an early pre-production car, but every Land Cruiser is getting a standard tow hitch. Every Land Cruiser will tow 6,000 pounds. More than the 4Runner, less than the outgoing Land Cruiser. And I was told by Toyota every Land Cruiser is also getting a standard trailer brake controller. Super big deal, folks. Really, really big deal. You know, I'm excited that Toyota's showing this commitment to towing, showing this commitment to the outdoor adventure lifestyle. Now, this base car, right, one thing which was not super clear in the press release is what is its underbody protection like? Because if you get the upper end trim Land Cruiser, you get skid plates, especially if you get the first edition. But this vehicle, let's see. Well, you can see you got our exhaust there. It appears that the fuel tank does have some skid protection. I don't know if you can see that down there. We're kind of on the wrong side, Cole. He's gonna have to lower his tripod a little bit. Sorry for the shaky video. So you can see you do have some underbody protection there on the skid plate, right there where I'm pointing. As we make our way forward, transfer box, got a little tiny skid plate, not too much going on there. You got that cross member, and then the engine is fairly vulnerable is what I'm seeing. And that's just some plastic shielding there above the oil pan. So look, if I was off-roading my Land Cruiser, what Toyota says to do, buy the upper end trims, buy the skid plates. You know there's going to be some aftermarket components. Let's check out the front here. Let's see if we've got any protection on the base car at the front. Okay, good. That's good to see. So we do have some shielding there. That's pretty thin, but at least in front of where you got the radiator and some of the cooling components, that's a pretty serious bit of kit. One thing which is a little lacking on this Land Cruiser, let me pull up my notes. Stock ground clearance. So Land Cruiser is going to have 8.7 inches of ground clearance from the factory. To put that in perspective, a 4Runner, four-wheel drive, right, it's going to run you about 9.6 inches. So about an inch less ground clearance than a 4Runner. And you know, less than Wrangler and Bronco too, if you look at the upper end trims there. You know the aftermarket is going to address these concerns. There are going to be lift kits and bigger tire options available basically as soon as these things hit dealer lots. Now as we make our way to the rear of this vehicle, another concern I have from an off-road standpoint, pretty bad departure angle, excuse me. So the approach angle, 31, breakover 25, the departure is 22. It's not great. I'm also seeing, like, if you look back here, you've got your trailer brake controller located underneath the bumper, kind of by this exhaust tip. That seems to be a pretty vulnerable place for a trailer brake controller. And I'm also seeing, of course, your spare tire mounted down there at the rear of the vehicle. What I do like, though, is look at those rear shock mounts on the solid rear axle. The rear control arm mounts. Looks pretty good in terms of clearance, which I'm excited about. So that looks like you do have some clearance to avoid rocks and all sorts of nasty stuff there. Now, the rear situation. You've got a dual opening rear gate. So you can start by popping open the lift, the rear glass there if you want to like lift over smaller items, groceries, that kind of thing. And then, of course, the full rear gate does swing open. It is a vertical lift on this new Land Cruiser. Pretty tall lift over height. So got a little bit of additional storage there, which I'm liking. Kind of just going on exploration tour with me. I'm not sure that this lifts up And then of course you got your view blocker here. But what are we missing back here? No third row. So no third row is available on the new Land Cruiser. So this is one of the iconic Land Cruiser traits that they are missing on this vehicle. If you look dating all the way back for, I know the 80 series had it, I think the 60s did too, and certain versions of the 40s did as well. The third rows would fold down from the side of the panels here at the rear portion of the vehicle, and then you had two seats, and it was like an iconic trait. No third row is going to be available in the States. Now abroad, I'm told a third row is, because this is a vehicle manufactured in Japan, which is going to be sold around the world, and you see reminiscence of that in the rear portion of this vehicle because you still have cup holders for a non-existent third row. Now, I do find that to be pretty useful, right? You're out camping, you've got lots of stuff in the back, you want a secure place to put your bottles or your drinks. It's a great place to do that, stick them in the cup holders. I also like this too. I do like the lift open gate. A little bit more of a pain for some garages, but it means that when you're working back here, you got a nice place to stay dry if you're dealing with all sorts of rain. All right, Cole, let's take a look at the interior because lots of big surprises on the interior of the Land Cruiser. Now, as I mentioned, I wanted to focus on this 1958, the base trim. And the first thing you notice, the seat design is extremely unique, almost like a wool design, texturized, not a traditional cloth like I was expecting. I find the seats, initial impressions, I'm 6 feet tall, pretty narrow. I find the seats to be very comfortable. Manual seats in this car, good amount of movement backwards. So even at 6 feet tall, you know, I've got tons of room. I think if I was 6'3", 6'4", I'd still have good room. Really good headroom in this vehicle as well. So one of the benefits of designing a square vehicle, tremendous amounts of headroom as we see here in this 1958. Interior materials and plastics. I mean, look, lots of black materials. I see, you know, the dash is a flat black material. Not a lot of contrast on this base car. And let's see if we can get power. Curious if it's gonna, this is just a static display, right? This is not a final version of this car, but let's boot it up. Latest version of Toyota's infotainment system located here. This base car, 1958, has an 8-inch screen. You can see where the screen would be bigger if we had the upper trim Land Cruiser. That's a 12.3-inch display on the tall one. You got your driver user settings, you got Apple CarPlay, you got Android Auto. This system is used in many, many Toyota vehicles now, from the Crown to the Tacoma to the new Tundra, right? Pretty standard in it, the way that works there, but pretty good system overall. Volume control as well, physical volume control. Below that, dual air vents. You spin these little knobs to adjust the air vents. Feel good, feel really, really premium. Dual automatic climate control, and I'm even seeing here heated seats and a heated steering wheel, which is quite nice. There is a premium package available on the Land Cruiser trim, but not on the 1958. I know that's confusing, but you just got to go with it, right? So the base car is the Land Cruiser 1958. The midline is the Land Cruiser. The top line is the Land Cruiser First Edition. So just get that in your head because it took me a while to get that. Now below that, we've got 3 USB-C ports, a couple of blank switches, and I'm loving this mode selector here. So we've got this little toggle, spin that to go between Eco, Sport, and Normal. Here we've got your drive mode, I'm not really sure what that button does. I'm gonna have to ask the Toyota folks what that does. We've got our electronically controlled second, so that I believe starts the 8-speed in second gear. And then we have crawl control here in this vehicle. And then upper end trims also get multi-terrain select, but, oh, I see what this does. So I think what you do is you actually can cycle this knob, so you can go between drive modes or crawl control selection on that mode select. Pretty sure that's how that works. And then, like I said, upper end Land Cruisers are also gonna get multi-terrain select. Good physical feeling there on the 8-speed automatic transmission selector, dual cup holders, and then this is the stuff that's got me excited. So, permanent 4-wheel drive. It's got a true center differential. It's not selectable between 2 high and 4 high. It's always in 4-wheel drive high. Then you can push in. If we were in neutral, we could select 4-wheel drive low. And then here, we've got our center differential lock and our buttons for the rear differential lock, which is really, really cool, and then traction control off. So this is the panel that got me excited. Specifically, that one button is what should get you excited. Now, as we lift up the armrest, good size storage bin there, really good size storage bin. And the steering wheel, I love the steering wheel. Chunky, square, old school, right? Very 1980s, actually, in kind of its approach. You got adaptive cruise, standard Toyota Safety Assist 3.0. So you got, you know, your blind spot monitoring, lane keeping, all of that's going to be standard in this vehicle. And then across the board here, Cole, I'll take the camera for a sec. You can also see we've got the digital instrument cluster. It's flashing a lot, pre-production. Don't judge the quality of the vehicle based on the screen, but you've got your indicators for charge, eco, and power, temperature control, fuel gauge on the right. Steering wheel controls for volume, for tune, all of that here. And then on the left side of the steering wheel, we find buttons for backup assist, automatic high beams there. AC, it's got a 2400 watt inverter in this vehicle, fuel there, and then this little guy down here is what I'm really excited about, trailer brake controller. Now, it's not as accessible as I'd like. I always like my trailer brake controllers typically on the right side of the wheel, as they kind of went full GM on us by putting it down here on the left, but just having standard trailer brake control is a really big deal. All right, Cole, let's go ahead and check out the rear seat. I've got about 5 minutes left with this vehicle. This is a super quick first look. As we step into the rear seat here, surprisingly flat floor for both driver and passenger side, and then a small hump in the middle for, of course, center-mounted occupants. And then we got air vents located for the back seat, old school style air vents with the little Land Cruiser logo there. And then we've got dual USB-Cs down there, and then your 12-volt socket. See, how does the cup holder feel? Good cup holders, look at that. Once again, this wool material, I'm really absolutely digging. Got a center-mounted dome light in the rear here, so if you're out camping, that could be very, very useful. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I really am. Curious how the seat mechanism works. It's got the fold and the tumble. Super interesting, look at that. That was kind of a surprise. So it's a fold and a tumble, or you can just do the fold. Very interesting, very old school. Lots of interesting mix of old school theories and new school approaches to this vehicle. I assume that fold and tumble too would be useful if we had the third row in other markets to get into the rear of the vehicle. Oh, interesting. But let's talk about the big news, Cole. Return to the front of the vehicle. Pricing. So we don't have full pricing details. Toyota says the base car, which is what we're looking at today, is going to have a price starting in the mid $50,000 range. Now, if I were to interpret it, that literally 55 grand starting. That's a lot less than the outgoing 200 series, which was $80,000, $90,000 range easily. It's still an expensive vehicle, but they got to leave room for the 4Runner in this lineup, because this vehicle no longer is as different. It no longer separates the void as much as the 4Runner, once did relative to the 200 series. So I'm curious what they're going to do with the new 4Runner. My prediction, that new 4Runner is going to be more affordable based directly on the Tacoma to leave room for the Land Cruiser. And then they can't step on the toes of this vehicle's premium sibling, the Lexus GX, which is what this vehicle is based off of. This rides on the TNGA-F architecture, by the way. So, mid-50s starting. This is the base car, so this should be the mid-50s before markups. We live in a world, where markups are kind of inevitable, and I wish that we could eliminate those, but that's just, where we're at in the world. But overall, guys, I mean, it's a pretty impressive vehicle. I'm liking what I see in terms of the modification potential on this vehicle, not only in terms of exterior modifications through Toyota, like roof racks and mud flaps and that kind of thing, but also the clearance that we see within this wheel arch, something that we've been missing on like a lot of the third-gen Tacomas and the latest 4Runners and that kind of thing. Same thing in the rear. And then what about like potential for a winch, right? Like, are aftermarket manufacturers gonna have to pull the 4Runner trick where they cut into the bodywork? Well, check this out. I mean, the bumper now is pretty significantly separated from the front quarter panel. So in the past, if you wanted to put a bumper on like your, especially 2015 and newer 4Runner, it's a lot of cutting, right? A lot of cutting of body-colored bumper material. But on this, you got the separate bumper from the quarter panel. And even, you can see there's a pretty big differentiation between that front bumper and this initial grille inlet. And then, like, look, lots of potential here, too, for fog lamps and off-road lights located here. Now, of course, being turbocharged, having some of that force-inducted capability means you got to keep in mind cooling potential on the front end here. If you want to get really close, Cole, there's a pretty big gap between the edge of the front bumper and the first radiator there. And I'm wondering if maybe you could squeeze a winch in there. Looks, just initial look, it's gotta be like 12 inches, which I'm really impressed about. So it appears that Toyota's really thinking about, with this vehicle, the aftermarket potential and the aftermarket capability of what can be done with the new Land Cruiser. Now, competitor set, 4Runner, potentially Wrangler, potentially Bronco, right, now that it's smaller. Potentially on the upper end, its own vehicle, the GX. But I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section below. A huge thank you to Cole behind the camera. I want to talk about one other thing we got coming up. We got a new cheap Jeep series debuting this weekend over at TFL Car. We bought a couple of cheap Liberties and a CJ, and I almost break my back off road. So you're going to want to stay tuned to that over at TFL Car. Big thank you to Cole behind the camera. Whew. That was a marathon, folks. I'll see you on the next video.